Hello friends, welcome to Edwiki Learning channel. Please do subscribe to get more updates on the DevOps concepts. This video is part of the full course AWS DevOps Practitioner training. Please do check the description below to get the link for the complete full course. Without further delay, let's get into the video. Thank you.
All right, team, welcome back. So let's get started with our Jenkins journey. And how many of you are not liking the Jenkins? I'm sure most of you folks might have been frustrated by now why this Jenkins is doing all the so much of mess, right? Yes, even I do feel the same, right? Out of this story, I just wanted to give you some context that, right, or maybe you can confirm me on my statement. By now, you should understand that, right, all the tools that we are using here, right? Maybe I'll just go back to this pipeline. So all the tools that I'm using here in order to ensure that my application is built, deployed, operational on my Kubernetes cluster, there is no standard process, correct? Saying that this is the only way that everyone has to follow in order to run your application. No, right? And there is no set of standard tools as well, right? There are hundreds of tools, hundreds of processes are available in the market. It's up to the individual who, right, their knowledge, their perception, their use cases, right, how they wanted to use that tool for solving their problem. Of course, at the end of the day, everyone has to build and deploy the application only, but there are different factors that are influencing here or taking into the consideration the way how you are designing your tools or the way how you are integrating your tools and what kind of the problem that you are solving. That is the forecasting or that is the thought process that you should be having. So that's the reason usually when I'm delivering this, right, I can directly come to the final one best practice and I can show that, hey, this is how we can run the application. It's so easy for me, right? But if you see, right, I'm always trying to start with some minimal setup, and I'm trying to do little more improvements, and I came to the today the kind of the pipeline setup, right? That way, you will understand that what are the different stages are there in terms of making the improvements, what are the different methods are there in running the application, what are all different ways how a single tool can be integrated or architect. So that will help you to have a thought process improved, correct? So that way, tomorrow when you have some requirement, right? At least you have a thought process that, hey, there are hundreds of different ways to achieve the same thing. Maybe let's start thinking what will be the best thing rather hard coded with one simple process. Here, this is right. So that's how I'm trying to teach you guys not only just a technical, I'm planning to teach you, right, the thought process as well. Because the DevOps is all about the thought process, right? The technical is different thing. We can easily go to the documentation and get some technical commands and things, right? But the thought process, how we can use that and how we can integrate it is a matter. Why I'm saying all this, right? Let's say today I'm showing one of the process, but that is not only the process, but unfortunately we can't spend the time for discussing all other different 100 ways, right? Let's say I can use the Jenkins to build the pipeline in 10 different ways, but we can't go over all the 10 different possibilities how we can make my pipeline is built and deployed, correct? Maybe here I'm using some set of plugins, right? Maybe I'm using the Kubernetes plugin, Docker pipeline plugin. Not necessary. We can use any other plugin as well. Go to the plugin documentation, search for the plugin. You use a different plugin. That plugin may be working in a different way, and see the documentation and use that, install it, write a pipeline code accordingly and possible, right? But we can't go to all the different other possibilities as well. Getting me? at least in our lectures, right? Probably one or two possibilities, and probably I can give you some more context. What are the different methods are there as much as possible. Being said that, in order to give you more context and give you more thought process, right? I have recorded some of the projects, and currently my projects are available in the Udemy. So here you can see there is one project to run on Kubernetes only. And again, nothing new, guys. Even this project also kind of your Jenkins pipelines, how to integrate the Maven, Kubernetes, Sonar, Docker, same thing, whatever we did it now, right, in Jenkins CI pipeline, same thing, but a little different way, right? So a little different way, the little integration way, some changes will be there and there. So just to make it more improvised, kind of, right? So it's worthy for you guys to go over this project as well, who are wanted to learn the other different methods, the possibilities. Okay, and I'll ask my admin in order to give you the free access for this projects. Whoever is interested can just enroll for free and follow whenever you have some time. And I have one more project as well, which is related to Terraform. So this is the Terraform project, right? Uh, which will definitely help you in understanding the different other possibilities too. Okay. Well, I just wanted to call out that I'm giving the access for these to improvise your thought process, and just follow and let me know if any further questions on this, right? Are we good on this? And once in a while, when I get some time, I'll be posting some of the videos in YouTube as well. So yeah, it's very rare that I'll be putting some videos here. I don't find much time, but when I get, I'll put something here. So definitely when I'm uploading something, it will be not just like a simple thing, right? There will be some significant uh, um, information will definitely be there. So yeah, it's worthy to follow and uh, look through, guys. So that just wanted to cover up something. Well, now coming back to our story, right? We have the Jenkins, which is running fine, and I have the Jenkins CI pipeline is there, and the CI pipeline, as I said, right, will be doing all the things and will be pushing it into our JFrog. So far, so good. Now, how I can deploy this application it into my target environment, correct? In the Kubernetes cluster. For that, as we already familiar, right, we need to create a CD pipeline, right? Let me show you how to prepare a CD pipeline. So probably I'm maintaining my steps in the README file, right? I'll go to the README file and let me see where I am currently. The CA pipeline is done, and this is the CD pipeline. Right, for the CD pipeline, we just need to have the values, right? Correct? The values, how you are expecting the application to be get deployed. So the values file and the pipeline configuration, everything to be in a Bitbucket repository, right? So let me take a Bitbucket repository where I wanted to keep my deployment specific configuration. Okay. I'll just go to Bitbucket, and again, if you want, you can maintain one single Bitbucket repository and maintain a different folder structure. One folder is for code, one folder is for values, or you can, use a different Bitbucket altogether. Not a problem. So I think I have the Bitbucket repository already with me, which has the required sample values that I wanted to use for the deployment. So interesting. So why I'm not finding the repository that I wanted to use, right? So this is the source code. So here I can see a repository and yeah. And all the repositories that I am using here are accessible for you guys as well, right? Just matter of you going and using or cloning my repositories, right? So this is the repository that I have with me, and let me try to clone this repository. Or you know what? If you see guys, my repository does not have anything in the master first of all, right? Just ignore file. Nothing is there in this master. So why nothing is there in the master? Because this is a multi-branch pipeline. You see here my repository, the deployment specific repository is the multi-branch repository which has multiple branches here as we covered in the previous discussions. So the dev branch will have all the dev environment related deployments, right? The QA will have the QA environment related and the perf and the production. That's how we can have the multiple branches here, right? So that's the reason I'm not using the master branch. Rather, I'm using other branches for the environment specific configuration to be get stored over there, right? Good. So I think for now, let me clone the dev branch just to show you how the dev branch is configured here. In the same way, we need to keep the config in the other branches as well based on the environment specific. So I'll just simply clone this repository. Right. So this is the folder where I'm currently. Git clone and specify by default the git clone will be cloning the master branch. If you wanted to specify the branch name, you need to use -b and specify the branch that you wanted to clone. So here I'm actually cloning a dev branch. Now you go to the EOS micro deployment branch, sorry, repository. So if I look into the branch, I can see that currently I'm in the dev branch. Yep, here you go. So if I look into this branch, right, the dev branch, you see the values.ml. So this is where I'm actually maintaining all the values, guys, right? So like how many replica count that you wanted to, and what is the ingress, like what is the URL that you wanted to access your application or any other, right? Whatever you wanted to supply the values to the dev environment, you can keep all of them here. You already know, right? These values will be used and will be replaced in your Helm chart templates and will be running accordingly, right? So that's how we maintain the dev specific values here. And if you go to the Jenkins file, this is the CD pipeline, right? Same thing again in the CD pipeline, and I'm mentioning that the pod template. The pod template has the details about how it can create a dynamic agent pod, and you see which service account that it has to use to for the dynamic agent pod, because the agent pod where the deployment steps are getting executed should have an access to the API server as well, because it has to deploy a pod, right? So I given the service account access as well. Automatically when the service account is mentioned in your manifest, automatically it will get the permissions whatever you have been given to that service account using the role binding, right? and you can mention the image name, which image that it has to use in order to create a dynamic agent pod as well, right? So, but if you look into the stages here, right, the stage one is all about cloning the repository, and you can mention that here, which branch. Like you see here, guys, which branch that you are expecting it to clone and the repository from where it has to clone the deployment specific configuration. If you look at here, the branch I'm not hard coding in my pipeline as well. Why? Probably the same CD pipeline that I'm using now, I wanted to use it for dev, I wanted to use it for QA, perf, and the production too, right? So if you mention that the dev here, probably you can't reuse this pipeline again for the different environments, right? So wherever possible, I'm just trying to make that into a variabilization so that that will be replaced with the actual value that you supply. So the syntax that you see here, this is the Groovy syntax. So this is how we need to render the values of a variable in the Groovy, because the Jenkins file by default work at a Groovy level only. So this variable I'm actually initializing and declaring the values at top lines. You see somewhere in the top line, DEF means definition, env is the variable, my value is dev. So when this pipeline code get executed, this value will be taken. That value will be used in the rest of the code wherever you have been referenced. That way, if you wanted to use this CD pipeline in the QA, you don't need to do any changes in the pipeline, right? It's just matter of you doing the changes in the line number 2, correct? In the line number 2, if you make it as QA, that works for the QA environment, because it is it is pulling the code from the QA branch, because here the QA will be get replaced. That's the plan, right? So this is for a dev, because I mentioned the environment name as dev, and it will clone the code from the dev branch only. Now you see the Helm chart here. So this is where I'm putting some commands to install the Helm chart. That's it. CD pipeline is so simple, right? Just take the code, I'm going to say take the values and take the Helm chart from the JFrog and deploy it. So here we see the Helm repo add in order to add my JFrog repository. So my repository is cmfax dot right cmfax.jfrog.io. I think my repo name is ed helm local, correct? That is where I have published in the CI pipeline, right? And yeah, now that's it, repo update. And you see this command helm upgrade -- install, right? We have executed this command even before as well manually, right? So, and you see here the namespace, I'm telling that deploy this application it into the specific namespace. The namespace name is coming from the variable, right? And you see here the values.ml, deploy using this particular values.ml. What is this file? This is the file that you are getting in the same repository itself, right? In the stage number one, whenever you clone the repository on the dev branch, this file also will be get cloned, right? And that file I'm referencing here, that use these values and use the Helm chart. This is my Helm chart, which is pulled from this JFrog repository, and just deploy it. And I'm just verifying that my deployment is successful on this dev namespace, and I'm just removing my values file. I think this is not needed as well, because this is the dynamic agent pod, right? Definitely my pod will be get terminated, new pod will come up, so I don't need to put any of these things here. That's it. This is the CD pipeline. So this CD pipeline is in the dev branch. Similarly, we need to keep it in the QA branch and other branches too. For now, let me publish these changes to the dev branch. Git commit -m, let's say config added. Why it is asking all this? git config user dot name, git config user dot email, now let me do git commit, let me do git push origin to the master, sorry, to the dev branch, right? It may ask for the password for pushing the code. If you wanted to clone, it will not ask for the password because these are the public repositories, just because you guys can access my repositories. Now I need to specify the password. This is my repository, right? Yeah, it's done. Now the deployment specific config and the pipeline code, everything is in the dev branch. All what you need to do is go to the Jenkins. In the Jenkins, you need to create a one more job. Let's say this is my CD job, or I would say like a deployment job, right? And here in the list, what kind of the job that you are creating, right? You see multiple options here again. The pipeline is one which I have used yesterday, right? And freestyle in the sense, we can, it's like a plug and play. If you go to freestyle, we can easily go and select the options from there. No one will use this type. Either you use pipeline or you use the multi-branch. These are the only two which the people are prefer to use it. Okay. So in this case, I wanted to go with multi-branch pipeline because one repository is now maintaining multiple branches of a different environment, right? Hence the reason I'm using the multi-branch pipeline. Click on OK. So here you see the branch sources. So here you need to tell that in this repository, it has to pick up which branches. So I'm telling to Jenkins that, hey, my repository and the config, everything is in the Bitbucket, right? You need to configure the details here. Specify your repository name. I meant to say the URL. Tell the credentials that it has to use to authenticate this Bitbucket. In this repository, right, I have multiple branches and it has to discover the branches, right? And that means by default, it has to go and look for all the branches. See, if at all, whichever the branch has a pipeline code, it picks up automatically. So this is where you need to tell which branches that it has to look for, right? You can say that look for all the branches. You see here the star. When it's a star, that means it will search for all the branches and it will look for the pipeline code. If there is a pipeline code, it will pick it up, right? If you wanted to tell that you take it only from dev, we can do that as well. But in our case, I wanted to include all the branches. I don't want to exclude master. Probably I can say that master branch, you exclude it because I don't want to use the master branch at all here, right? Just come down. So you see here, whatever the branches that you found here, in that branches, you look for the file called Jenkins file because that is the file has a pipeline code, right? That's it. Now the Jenkins will go to this repository, will search for the branches. In each branch, it will look for the Jenkins file. If there is a Jenkins file, it will create a pipeline for you. Apply, save. Now, once you create the multi-branch pipeline here and you see here the scan, in general, if you click on the scan, it will go to the repo, search for the branches, look for the Jenkins file, all these things. If you see the log here, you will get to know that, you see, there is a production branch, there is a Jenkins file, QA branch, Jenkins file, perf branch, Jenkins file, dev branch, Jenkins file, like that. So wherever it found the Jenkins file, on which branches it found the Jenkins file, it has created a pipeline for you. If you go back to one level above, you see this is how it is. Maybe I'll go to the dashboard. You see, this is the pipeline job that I created. If I click on this deploy pipeline job, inside that, now you see all these are the different pipelines. The dev pipeline for deploying it into dev, perf is for deploying it into perf, production for deploying it into production, so on, so on. So now if you really wanted to deploy it into dev, right? So go to the dev pipeline and just click on build now. Of course, it actually started off executing the job automatically for you. It is failed as well, that's fine. But if you wanted to deploy to dev, you just click on build now here. Let's say if you wanted to deploy to QA, go to the QA pipeline and just click on build now. So it know that it has to get the Jenkins file, values file from the QA branch of your repository, and it will just get it from there, right? So that's how it is. Now, why the dev is failed? Let me see the build number one, console output. So it is taking the Jenkins file, that's fine. You see guys, it automatically created a agent pod for you automatically. The slave is created for you. This is the config that it has used to create a slave pod. All good. It is cloning the repository, right? Just come down, and it is actually running all the Helm related commands. Good. You see here, it is complaining here that um, the limits.cpu is not found. Okay, that means probably I have the Helm template in the deployment.yaml file. In the Helm template, I might have been given resources.limits.cpu, but the value is not supplied probably, correct? If I look into my dev values file, you see here guys, I don't have any resources information, and it is complaining that there is no value provided for this, and it is complaining. That's fine. We need to provide this information, right? So give me a second, guys. I'll be back in 30 seconds, right? Then I'll fix this issue. I'll add a config there. Okay. Thank you. All right. So let me try to fix the problem. So what I do is under the resources limit CPU, right? Under the resources, under the limits CPU, sorry, CPU, it should be, let's say, 1 millisecond. Probably I can go to my Helm template as well to see what and all different values that it is expecting, right? So how I can avoid these issues, guys, in general? Let's say from the values.yaml, let's say you are not giving the values, but still it should go and deploy with some defaults. That is where we need to include some default values in the Helm chart. So if you are not passing the values from the deployment side, right, there will be no issue. It will deploy with the default values, whatever is found in the values file, right? For now, let me see here. One is replica count, one is the image, and have the CPU, memory, lot of things. Let me match this config, guys. CPU, memory, let's say 5 MB, and request. Well, so looks good, and I need to give the image as well. So in the deployment, I need to specify the image, which image you wanted to deploy. The image will be in our Docker registry, right? Let me see what is the image that got published to the Docker Hub registry. Basically, I'm preparing my values.ml file because I don't have defaults. So this is my image name. You see, updated about 23 hours ago. This was published yesterday. So I'll just say that this is the image that it has to use. Looks good. In the service.ml, I don't have any variables. In the ingress.ml, this is already given. So looks good. Now let me push these changes. Git add, git commit, changes added, git push origin to the dev branch. Okay, I need to give the password. So now let me try to build it one more time, right? So I'll just go to the dev. Let me click on build now. So I'll just go to the build number 2 and console output to see what's happening here. And you see that the dynamic agent pod created automatically, and it is trying to execute the stages. Now you see that I'm getting the different error. The error says that the namespace dev is not found and it is not able to deploy. Of course, right? Because in the template, you did not call out that the namespace has to be created, right? I have the deployment manifest file, I have the ingress and the service, right? So this is my brand new EKS cluster, right? The Kubernetes cluster. It does not have the namespace. What do you think, guys? The namespace manifest file should be part of the Helm chart? Not really, right? So the creating the namespace is just a one-time job. The very first time when you have the cluster ready, right? So we don't need to have that. You can just create it and keep it ready there. I just have created the dev namespace now. So now let me try to run my pipeline again. Build now. So once the pod is running there, you are good, right? That will be accessible and all the other things will happen. So I need to give the password again. Which password? Yeah, nothing. You see now the deployment is done. You see that it is deployed it into the dev namespace. Here you can see the command, guys. So in my pipeline code, the namespace is a variable, right? Now it is automatically replaced with the dev based on your pipeline code, and it is deployed it into the dev namespace. The pipeline is successful. That's it. So now if you want to deploy it into the QA, you just need to execute the QA and that will go into QA namespace. So on, so on, so on, so on. Out of this whole story, right, have the CI pipeline to create a Helm charts. I mean to say deployment specific config. The deploy job or deployment pipeline is for deploying it into multiple environments, which have the multi-branch pipeline here. So far, so good. The thing is, let's say now the developer has made some changes to the source code, right? I think this is where my source code is there, right? Correct. Let's say the developer has made some changes to the source code. So I don't want to go to Jenkins, go to the build specific pipeline and click on the build now here, correct? That is again a manual step, right? I don't want to do that. So I need a automation such a way that whenever there is a change in the source code, the Jenkins should be able to run this build pipeline automatically so that it can take the latest code and go with all the stages and prepare the deployment specific artifact for you, right? How do you ensure that? How Jenkins know that when there is a change in the source in the Bitbucket repository, correct? There are two methods that are available in order to configure that, right? As of now, I'm coming and clicking on the build now, right? No, that is not the expectation. So to make the automated builds, whenever there is a source code changes, there are two ways. The approach one is, so this pipeline is already created, right? I can go to the configure tab here to see the pipeline, how it is configured. This is what I said yesterday, right? This is my repository where the source code is there, right? And get it from master branch, get it from Jenkins file. So in this, if you go little up, right, under the build triggers, you see something called poll SCM. Poll SCM in the sense you can specify a cron syntax, the schedule basically. Let's say my Jenkins should go and check the Bitbucket repository very often. You specify the interval right here. Let's say the Jenkins should go and check the Bitbucket repository every 10 minutes once. You specify the interval here, right? So this is the cron syntax, how you need to specify. The first digit will be like minutes, hours, date, month, day of the week. That's how the syntax will be. We already touch base on this, right? Just a general cron based schedule, which we have talked about it in the probably lambda. Yeah. Anyway, so this is how you specify the syntax. We can see some examples as well here, how we can specify the syntax here, some information, right? Accordingly, you go and put it there. You see some examples here, right? So once you specify the syntax here, the Jenkins will go and look for the Jenkins will go and check the Bitbucket repository. Is there any new latest commits are there? If it found there is a new commit came in, automatically the pipeline will be get started. That is the first approach. So in this poll SCM concept, the Jenkins is polling the Bitbucket repository to see is there any changes. If any changes, go and build the pipeline. So what's the problem with this method, guys? The problem is if you specify the interval as 10 minutes, let's say. So let's say the developer has committed a code. Do you think the pipeline will get started immediately? No, right? Maybe at the next interval, right? Every 10 minutes, the Jenkins is checking, is there any new commits? Probably in next 10 minutes, your pipeline may get started. So which is not realistic, right? So you can't keep 1 minute again. Unnecessary, the Jenkins is keep on checking the Bitbucket repository. Is there any changes? Maybe the developer is not at all putting any latest code over there. Why it has to poll the repository every often. So, but the poll SCM is the recommended one if your Jenkins is running in the private subnets. Let's say the Jenkins is deployed it into the private subnets, which will not be accessible in the internet space, right? Then you put the poll SCM concept, because you all know, right? The poll SCM will require the egress internet connectivity, correct? What is egress? The Jenkins is now connecting to the Bitbucket, right? That means from the Jenkins, the connection is going out to the internet. So that is possible using the NAT gateways anyway, which we are already familiar. So If your Jenkins is in a private network and the Bitbucket is in a public network, then the pool SCM is the ideal option. If your Jenkins is in a public, right, then we can go with the one more other option called trigger builds remotely. So in the trigger builds remotely, and of course there is a specific security token is available. So here you can give some token, any token that you like it, not a worry. It's just like a token that the Bitbucket has to provide. This is called as a webhook concept. In this webhook concept, I'm telling to Jenkins that, hey Jenkins, you please allow running the pipeline builds automatically from remotely. Now I'll specify some authentication token here, and there is some suggestion here how you can prepare a URL. This is called as a webhook URL. Let me copy this URL. Maybe I'll just put it into my README file for now. This is create a webhook, right? So in this URL, right, the Jenkins URL is yours. This is the Jenkins URL. I'll replace that. And the token is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Of course, you can use any tricky token. I'm just using simple one here. Like that, you prepare a webhook URL like this case. Right? Now, just come down and click on apply and save. Now what you need to do is you need to give this URL. This is the webhook URL to trigger the Jenkins pipeline, right? This URL you need to give to Bitbucket. Go to Bitbucket, go to the repository where the developers are pushing the source code. In the repository settings, you go to webhook concept. Already there is one, right? Let me edit the same thing. So you go to the webhook concept, and this is where you need to add the webhook. This is where you need to add the webhook. I'm saying that, hey, this is the webhook let me do something. Probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So I have the URL handy. What is my job name, guys? Build. So this is URL, and you need to specify the username and password of your Jenkins as well. How to authenticate the Jenkins. So let me see what is my username and password. Probably I can go to my Jenkins admin is my username. I can go to configure. You can generate a token. So this is the token that I can use as a password. Apply save. So let me go to the things here. So this is my password for accessing. Interesting. The token is not saved. Generate a token. Copy the token. Apply, save. Now let me replace the token here. My username is admin, right? Now just come down and tell the triggers here. That means what I'm doing, I'm informing to Bitbucket that, hey, whenever you get a new commit, you please go and call this URL so that the Jenkins pipeline will be started. So that the moment when the new commit comes in, the Jenkins will start the pipeline execution, right? No, there will be no delay. Why? In this case, the Bitbucket is calling the Jenkins, not Jenkins is calling the Bitbucket. The poll SCM method, the Jenkins is looking for the Bitbucket changes. In this method, in the webhook method, the Bitbucket is actually informing to the Jenkins whenever there is a new code changes out there. That's the difference. So here you can tell to Bitbucket that when it has to call the Jenkins URL. You see here the triggers the push, in the sense if someone is pushing the code, then the URL will be called. If someone is actually approving the pull request, the URL will be called. If the pull request is got merged, then the URL will be called. It's up to your use case now. When you are expecting the pipeline has to be triggered, right? So let's say if you think that when the pull requests are merged after the approval process, then my pipeline has to be has to be executed, then you go and tell that merged is the criteria here. That's how it works, right? So for now, let me give the push. If someone is pushing the code, my code has to be a trigger. Just save it. So you can go to the view request as well to see if my URL is called or not, what happened. You can enable the history as well here to see what's happening, how many times my Jenkins pipeline is called, all these things. Now, if I come back to my Jenkins and see this pipeline, guys, the build pipeline is actually executed in 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 a last lecture, right? Let's see if it trigger automatically if there is a source code changes. What I do, right? I'll just try to push one simple dummy change so that I just try to see the behavior of the Jenkins pipeline. So I'll just go to my repository. Let's say as a developer, I can just do some changes. I don't need to do any changes, right? I just put some dummy space. So EOS micro services admin source. Let's say git add, git commit some changes, git push origin to the master. Remember, the webhook is at a repository level, not at a branch level. The push may happen to any branch. It will call the Jenkins pipeline. So let's say the developer has made some changes to the code. The changes are committed. Now let me come and see the Jenkins. So if it is not working, then somehow the webhook is not working, right? Let me go to the Bitbucket and refresh this history to see what's happening. You see that 30 seconds ago, it tried calling the Jenkins URL. Somehow it is failed. Let me see the reason why my webhook is failed. So this is the output. Can someone help me, guys? What is the HTTP status score 404? Not found, right? So look like it is not finding the job. So what I can do, right? I can just come here and let me get this details again. So this is the URL that I need to use, right? Copy this. So let me fix it here. Look like there is a problem with the URL. That's why it is not finding. Let me edit the webhook. Probably, right? There is uppercase build here. Probably that is the reason. Look like. Now let me save it. Let me try to do one more push. I'll just try to do one small change over there. Let me try to add the changes to the staging. Let me commit the changes. Let me push the changes. Right now, yeah, it will ask for password again. Now the changes are published. If I come back and look for the request here, you see that the request is going through. Now if I come to the Jenkins and look for here, you see guys, the in progress, the build pipeline is started automatically. If you go inside this, you should be able to see that the build number 4 is now happening, and it started off running all of your stages based on your Jenkins file. That is the whole story about the webhook integration. And now if any developer is pushing the code to the repository, the pipeline will kick off automatically and creates the required deployment specific artifact for you, that we can take it up to the dev towards the production based on your deployment pipelines. In general, the deployment will not be automated, guys, because I don't want my application going into all the environment just like that, right? Someone has to validate if all good or not. So the deployment will be a manual. Whenever you wanted to deploy it into the specific environment, you go to that pipeline and just click on this. It's a single click deployment, I would say. Everything is already configured, right? The Jenkins only doing the deployment, but when to do the deployment, that is something that you need to tell, right? So you can just come and click on build here. That environment will be get deployed. That is called as a Jenkins CI and the CD pipeline. As I said that, this is the one approach how we can make a CI/CD pipeline. There will be hundreds of different ways as well, right? Well, are we good with this flow? The thing is, from now onwards, whatever I'm going to cover, at least for next few days or even today as well, right? Even start from yesterday as well, right? The things are going in a little advanced way, right? Of course, it's not so easy to catch up all these things, I agree. But yeah, I'm trying to go to the level to which level you would need some knowledge in attending the interviews and at least for your specific role that you are trying in, right? But you know, some advanced topics that I'm covering in just for your information, just to get some thought process, but it's not possible to implement all of them as well, right? So because that will go it into the kind of architect role, SME role, right, which is not really needed at a specific your role prospect, which is not scope as well as part of the current scope that we have in discussion here. Okay, I'm just giving this context just because don't expect that I'll be implementing the whole architecture in our discussions only. Okay, but I wanted to cover certain things so that you will know right, some details, but it will not come to your headache in doing this implementation architecting them, guys, because this is really a senior architect role kind of the responsibilities if you go in next level of concepts. So that means just have some idea, that is good enough. Don't worry about how to implement all of these. If you have some time, yes, that is definitely, but yeah. So now let me talk about something else, guys, after giving this heads up. I'm just trying to put all the Jenkins related stuff that I have done in a little summary mode just to make you guys understanding or revising it one more time. all what I'm doing here is right, whenever the source code gets committed to the Bitbucket repository, the Bitbucket webhook is calling the Jenkins pipeline, and the Jenkins will now take care of executing the pipeline automatically. As part of the CI pipeline, the Jenkins is actually right cloning the code and the CI related configuration. That is the first stage, right? The Git checkout is the first stage in your pipeline code. Then the pipeline will go to the next stage to do the Maven build, right? Then the next stage will be pushing the Maven build it into the Sonar for quality analysis. Then the next stage will be pushing that artifact it into the JFrog, so that your Spring Boot application artifact may be a dependency for some other projects, so that other projects will make use of this artifact, right? And the next stage will be going to the Docker build stage to create a Docker images, and then the next step will be pushing that Docker images to your registries. Could be a Docker registry or ECR or whatnot. I'll definitely show you how to create a ECR repo as well later, right? It could be same. So what is the next step, guys? Once you have the image ready and the image is available in the registries, whichever the registry you called out, what will be the next step? Right? Once the image is ready, the next step is all about preparing the Helm chart, correct? So if you go back to my CI pipeline, right, in my CI pipeline, right, I have a stage called Helm chart preparation. In the Helm chart preparation, right, this is where I'm creating the Helm chart. Then that Helm charts will be publishing to the JFrog Artifactory. Are we good with this CI pipeline? Now, tell me one thing, guys. In this pipeline, the way how I did it today, right, one stage is depending on the previous stage, correct? So probably if you have any questions on the chat, put it in the chat window, guys. I'll be on mute for another 30 seconds. Something is comes up. Give me a second. Well, no questions to me. Well, so coming back to this architecture, right? Each stage will be somehow depending on the previous stage. Agree with me? But if you closely observe this, right, building the Helm chart is not depending on the previous stage, correct? What is that you are using in building the Helm chart from the previous stages? Pretty much you are not using anything that came out from the previous stages in building the Helm chart, at least as of today when I'm doing my CA pipeline. The Helm chart is a generic Helm chart which has some Kubernetes related configuration in a variabilization template format, how it can be get deployed, correct? If you closely look at, right, even today, even pretty much the Docker image name and the Docker image tag, probably that is what I need in deploying, right, in my Helm chart. But am I using that Docker image that is coming from the build process in the Helm chart building process? No, right? If you look at today, right, my Helm chart, in the Helm chart, in the template, even the image tag is also variabilized, and I am passing that image at the deployment side from the values.yaml file, correct? So then, am I really using something that is came out from this CI process to build my Helm charts? Not really, right? I didn't use any of the CA related outcome to build my Helm chart in this specific use case. But Now, the second thing, let's say the somehow the CA is working and I'm not too much worried about whether my Helm chart creation process is using the previous stages or not. Somehow it is working fine, looks good. Now, if I ask you, hey, currently, let's say the Helm chart is prepared in a way that there is no liveness and readiness probe, correct? If you recollect my Helm chart, the template, the basic template that I have used for testing purpose, which has some resources, limits, and other things, right? It does not have any liveness and readiness probe at this time. Now, if I ask you, hey, a DevOps engineer, look like the Helm chart that we are using today is not having the health checks probes. Can you please update the Helm chart, right, by adding the liveness and readiness probe as well? Now, tell me, guys, where will you be adding your liveness probe and the readiness probe? Because the liveness and readiness probe that first of all should be there in the template. Then only you can pass the values later, right? But if it itself not there in the template, you have to update the template, right? So you can't give the you can't update the health check probe in the Helm charts directly, right? Where you need to do this? So you need to update your templates in the Bitbucket repository, correct? Because all of your Helm chart definition is coming from the Bitbucket only, correct? You as an administrator, right? You as a DevOps engineer, you keep all the Helm chart related configuration or the templates in the Bitbucket repository, correct? The CI pipeline will actually take it from the Bitbucket, then it will follow all the stages in order to prepare the stuff for you. Agree with me? In this current approach, right, even if I ask you, can you go and add a template or changes into the template, you put it into the Bitbucket repository only, correct? And you go to the deployment, I mean to say templates folder, you go to the deployment.yaml file and just put some more number of lines over there. Good. Now the question for you at this time, if you are adding the liveness and the readiness probe configuration, a extra configuration in the template, in the Helm template, what will happen, guys? Do you think the Jenkins CA pipeline will start? This is all about the thought process. The CA will start, right? If you are putting the, or if you are making some changes to the Helm chart in this repository, your CA will start. Why? Your source code that is came from the that is given by the developer and the Helm charts that you are adding, both are in the same repository, right? It doesn't matter whether the code is changed, or it doesn't matter whether the Helm chart configuration is changed, or it doesn't matter any other file is changed. The moment when the Bitbucket repository is updated, then it call the webhook, then the pipeline will start. The pipeline will take care of going through the Maven, Sonar, Docker, all the different stages. If then the question for you at this time, if you as a DevOps engineer adding or doing some changes to the Helm chart definition in the Bitbucket repository, do you think that the source code has to go for the Maven and the or other build process? No, right? That's a problem. That means just because you are keeping the source code and the Helm chart definitions both in the single repository, whenever you wanted to do the Helm chart changes, it is again going through the whole CI process to build the source code, which is not necessary at this time because the code is not changed at all. So to avoid that, right, what I'm planning, right, rather me keeping the Helm chart definitions it in the same repository or in same location where my source code is there, probably I'll try to keep my Helm charts it into a different repository. So One repository I'm maintaining for my source code. The another repository I'm maintaining it to keep my Helm charts. Let's say now I'll keep all of my Helm charts right into a different repository. I'll keep it over there. Now, how that Helm charts will come into a JFrog? Again, you need to have a pipeline. So you create a one more pipeline. You create a one more pipeline, a Jenkins pipeline, right? And that Jenkins pipeline now will take care of taking the Helm charts that you have published it to the second Bitbucket repository, and then that will be get created as a Helm charts. That Helm charts will be get published to the JFrog. Nothing. In the CI pipeline that I have used today, right? Just take out that Helm chart preparation stage. You put that into a different pipeline and you configure it as a separate. I'm just dividing, nothing much, right? Rather, rather keeping it as one single CI pipeline, including the code and the Helm chart, I'm just breaking it into two parts. Make sense? With that, whenever there is a source code changes, the CI pipeline, or I would say the source CI pipeline, just to make a difference, right? Because I have now two pipelines. One is the CI pipeline for code build. One is the CI pipeline for Helm chart build, correct? Whenever there is a source code changes in the Bitbucket repository, the code CI pipeline will be get started and it creates all the required Maven, Sonar, whatever it is. Whenever there is a Helm chart is changing, then the Helm CI will be get executed, and that will take care of preparing the Helm chart and putting it into the JFrog. Now, so if you closely look at this, right, that's why I said before I start with this discussion, it's not possible to implement and show you all these different you know, exercises that I'm discussing here, right? So, but yeah, we can understand the thought process since we have already have the context or the technical basics. Now, can I do these changes, guys? In the code CI pipeline, can I take out this part, right? In the code CI pipeline, so can I take out this part? If I take out this part, right, what will happen? The code CI pipeline will just take care of creating a Docker image, right? You'll just get a Docker image ready for your source code, whatever the changes are came in. That's it. Once you have a Docker image ready, if you wanted to deploy that Docker image, you update the Docker image tag, whatever the Docker image is created, right? You put the Docker image tag in the values file in the deployment side, and you do the dev deployment, take care of. The Helm charts creation is done by this second pipeline, right? The Helm CI. Now, just to call out three statements. Statement number one is whenever there is a source code changes, the core CI pipeline will take care of preparing a Docker image. Step number two, whenever there is a Helm charts configuration changed, then the Helm CI pipeline will take care of preparing the Helm chart and keeping it into the JFrog. The thought statement is whenever you wanted to deploy that Helm chart it into any environment, you go to the multi-branch pipeline, you update the values file, you specify which image, which other values, and you know run the deployment pipeline that will take care of deploying it into the target environment. Are we good with this? A lot of things are right. Yeah, but I can still make a little more improvements for this, right? What I can think of, like let's say whenever the developer is changing the source code, right? Whenever the developer is changing the source code, I want that to be get deployed it into the dev automatically. So for that, right, we can keep this as well. I mean to say, sometime back I have taken out, right? We can even still keep the same thing here as well. So what I can do, right, we can put your pipeline in such a way that, right, in the code CI pipeline where the source code is coming to Maven build, Sonar, Docker, right? In that pipeline, you can add a stage saying that once the Docker image is created, right, then it can clone the Helm chart definitions from the another Bitbucket repository. Then you do the Helm build process, create a Helm chart and put it into a JFrog. That way, either the source code changes or the Helm definition changes. In both cases, I'm getting my Helm chart ready in my JFrog artifactory. The only advantage that I'm getting it now, right? If I wanted to do only the Helm chart related changes, I don't want it to go via the Maven, Sonar, Docker, all these different source code related build, right? That I'm avoiding now because I'm keeping the Helm chart sit into a different location. But I'm still taking the advantage of the code changes. If the code changes, it still can go and create a Helm chart and prepare it for you as well with the default images, whatever is got built in. That's how we can put some customization or just add some stages accordingly. Make sense? Now it's up to the project and company and the environment guys which method that they wanted to follow. There is no hard rule that this is the only best practice, right? It can be like this also. Some projects will have only the one pipeline will just take care of creating the image. The other pipelines will take care of other things. Some projects may have this method as well. It's up to the use cases. I'm just trying to put multiple thought process in one place. Now, forget about like whether the CI pipeline or the Helm CI pipeline, whoever is doing all these things. Let's say you have the Helm chart ready in the JFrog Artifactory. How are you going to deploy that Helm chart, guys? Let's say we have the Helm chart in our JFrog Artifactory, and how are you doing the deployment now? As of today, I'm using the Jenkins CICD, sorry, Jenkins multi-branch CD pipeline, right, for deploying it in. So as part of the deployment, it is taking the values from the values.yaml file that is coming from the specific branch, and then it takes the Helm chart from the JFrog, then it will apply the values and it is deploying it into the target environment, right? A question for you at this time. Let's say the Jenkins CD pipeline is executed on dev environment. The pipeline take care of taking the Helm chart, taking the value file, deployment, everything is done. It is deployed successfully. Once it is deployed, let's say one bad DevOps engineer is logging into the Kubernetes and he is doing some changes in the pods or in the deployment. Possible, right? I can directly go to the Kubernetes and I can run a kubectl command. I'll use the kubectl command and I'll try to edit the deployment. Did anyone know how to edit it? I can do that, right? Whatever is currently running there, I can just go and modify that configuration on the fly. You can just use kubectl edit command and just modify the configuration. The problem here is if you are doing some changes manually in the Kubernetes cluster by running the kubectl directly, that is not a consistent in terms of the configuration. Your pipeline is deployed one configuration and now the Kubernetes is running with a different configuration because someone has come and modified the configuration manually. Do you think the Jenkins will track the changes? Hey, look like some manual changes are done in the Kubernetes by a admin, and look like I need to revert the changes automatically based on what I wanted to deploy. Will that be doing by the Jenkins automatically? No, right? Now that I need to avoid in the sense, even if the developers or a DevOps engineer is doing the changes in the Kubernetes manually by running the kubectl command, that has to be reverted automatically to the Helm chart definition that what you have committed to the Bitbucket. I mean to say, now after looking into this whole process, guys, if I ask you a question like this, can you go and update your replica count to 3? Where will you be doing the replica count update? Will you go to Kubernetes and run a command called kubectl apply command? After looking into this whole process, if I ask you to update the replica count, you will never do a kubectl apply command. Maybe during the learning time, we updated the replica count in the deployment file and you do a kubectl apply command. But when it comes to the real time, right, you will never use a kubectl apply command just like that. The value has to be come from the values file. Where is the values file? It has to come from your repositories only. Okay. If I ask you, can you go and do a health check probe configuration? Let's say the template does not have the health check. Now, if I ask you, can you go and add a health check template? Will you be running the kubectl apply command by editing the deployment.yaml file? No. Where will you be adding that now? Let's say the existing Helm chart does not have the liveness and readiness probe. Now I will ask you to add the liveness and readiness. That has to go to the Helm chart, right? You go and do the changes in the Helm charts. You push it into a Bitbucket repository that will be creating as a Helm chart and publishing it into the JFrog. From the JFrog only, you ask your CD pipeline to take it and do the deployment, correct? That means you are not doing anything on the Kubernetes directly using kubectl commands, guys, except monitoring. I wanted to see how many pods are currently running in. Maybe you can go and run kubectl get pods. But any writing operations, doing the changes will not be done automatically. I mean to say manually. You always do the changes into the manifest files and put it into Bitbucket. Your pipelines will take care of preparing the stuff and doing the deployments. Okay. Out of all this story, right, the problem that I see, right, just coming to that point, the problem is if at all a DevOps engineer or whoever is doing some manual changes in the Kubernetes for any reason, right, it has to be reverted immediately to the config. That is what it is getting it in from the Bitbucket. That is not doing by the Jenkins for you. So hence the reason now I'm taking the help of Argo. The CD pipeline that I have talked about some time back, right? The multi-branch CD pipeline. I'm completely not using the CD pipeline now. I'm replacing my multi-branch CD pipeline with Argo. I'm replacing my multi-branch CD pipeline. The way how I deployed my application it into the dev environment using the multi-branch pipeline. That whole pipeline I'm replacing with a concept called Argo, because Argo has a better strategy in terms of doing the deployments comparing to the Jenkins deployments. Argo is very particular tool for a Kubernetes deployments only. Argo is doing only the deployments. It won't do the CI part. So the CI you still be doing it using the Jenkins only, but the CD part will now be taken care by the Argo. How Argo is replacing the CD portion of Jenkins, how the Argo will work differently than the Jenkins CD pipeline. When you are using Argo, right, you deploy the Argo application to run as a pod in your Kubernetes cluster only. Then you tell to Argo that, hey Argo, I have got some Helm charts in the JFrog repository. So can you take the Helm charts from the JFrog? Can you take the values from the Bitbucket repository where my values are there, then please do the deployment. Pretty much what Argo is doing. Argo is now responsible to take the Helm chart from JFrog, take the values from your Bitbucket repository wherever the values are there, then it will try to do the deployment for you. Because Argo will now prepare a final manifest files based on the values. It will give it to the Kubernetes API server. The API server will start doing the deployment, and finally your application will be up and running over there. Pretty much in the CD pipeline, in the Jenkins CD pipeline also, I did the same thing, right? In a way, in the Jenkins CD pipeline, what I did, I just specified one command to pull a Helm chart from JFrog. I did one command to pull a values file from the repository. Then I ran a command called helm install command that takes care of deploying, right? Pretty much same thing, but that portion is now replaced with a specialized tool called Argo. So that the advantage with Argo, right? Argo is the continuous sync process. In the sense, Argo is not just responsible to deploy, it also responsible for doing the syncing. In the sense, let's say the Argo is taking the Helm chart from JFrog, taking the values from your repository, and it will deploy. Then Argo will be keep on checking whether my deployment configuration is matching with my values or not. Let's say in this case, right, in your repository, in the values file, you mentioned that the replica count is 3. Then the developer went and modified the replica count by running the kubectl command manually to 1, let's say. The Argo will identify that, okay, this is running with 1, look like it is not matching with my value file. Let me go and sync it. So it will update the value file again, and it will bring it back to the 3 replica count only. That way, the Argo is ensuring that the current state of your Kubernetes is exactly matching with the values or the configuration that you added in your repository level. So that you don't need to worry about if someone else is going and doing the changes in my Kubernetes manually. Though it is doing, the Argo will just sync it up and reset it back to the config, whatever is coming from the repository level. That is the continuous sync that the Argo is doing. That is the additional or the most useful advantage comparing to the traditional CD pipeline that you are composing using Jenkins. Right? So that means what? The CD process is now taken care by the Argo, right? The best useful thing is continuous sync process. This process is called as a GitOps process. The people will call this as a GitOps. Why? The Argo is taking your data from the Git and deploying it into the target directly. If you see here, the values are in the Bitbucket. Argo is taking and deploying. There are no multiple stages here. There are no multiple layers here, correct? So this is called as a GitOps model. Take the config from the Git and deploy it into the wherever you wanted to. There is no multiple layers in between, right? So that kind of the approach is called as a GitOps model. Argo is one of the popular GitOps model to do the continuous deployment it into the Kubernetes clusters. So if I look at your question in the chart window, right, Argo is like acting as a Jenkins. I would say like Argo is acting as like a Jenkins CD pipeline, not as a Jenkins. If I say Jenkins, Jenkins has a lot of things. The Jenkins has a CI capability, CD capability, a lot of other things, right? Only the CD part, only the deployment part of your Jenkins is now taken care by the Argo. Argo will not do the CI part for you. And Argo is very specialized only for deploying it into the Kubernetes, not for any other reason as well. But the Jenkins has many other generic purposes too, right? So in order to set this up Argo, right, it's just matter of deploying the Argo application to run as a pod, and just tell that, hey, Argo, take the Helm chart from JFrog, take the values from my so-and-so repository, please deploy. Now it take care of doing the continuous sync automatically. Now a question for you at this time. So if I ask you, hey, can you go and update the replica account of my application? Where will you be doing the change now? Just go and update the values file in the Bitbucket repository. The Argo will take that data and will sync it up in the Kubernetes. That's it. And it is very fast as well. Within seconds, it will take your values and it will be syncing in the Kubernetes. That's the process, guys. So somehow if the Argo is deploying your application, then you all know, right, how this application will be accessible, right? Whoever is accessing the application from the external browser site, that request usually resoluted using the route 53 name resolution concept. The request will come to the load balancers of AWS. Then that request will come to the ingress resource of your Kubernetes. That will go to the cluster IP service. From the cluster IP service, the request will go to your application pod based on the label concept. Somehow the application will be accessible by the users. I just wanted to put that piece as well here to understand it. Argo is a completely open source solution, so it's free to use, no licensing. So like that, if you look into the automation tools, there is a Jenkins, there is a there is something called let me come back and see the things here. There are at least 10 different possibilities are there how we can achieve this. CICD pipeline tools. Why can't I use the ChatGPT? So can you list the popular CICD tools? So I spent some time in Jenkins and a bit of Argo, just for the Argo use cases. If you see here, guys, the Jenkins, Travis CI, Circle CI, GitLab CI/CD, TeamCity, Bamboo, and there are many. You see the list. AWS also there has their own pipeline, right? And drone. I think it is not even given some urban code, and there are a few other as well. Tecton is one more tool for building. But yeah, we don't need to worry about all of these. We can't learn that too. But having some most popular ones are good enough. I would say Jenkins Argo is good enough at this time. And I think I just wanted to show you the ChatGPT. Let's say, can you create a Jenkins CI Jenkins file for Spring Boot application? You see, guys, the pipeline code that I have used, right, is everything is prepared for you by the ChatGPT, right? The checkout stays, right? The build stays. This is for Maven build. Then it's a sample anyway. We need to do little tweaking there. The deployment, right? And you see, this is the syntax for sending the emails as well. If it is success, we'll get an email. If it is failure, we'll get another email. Maybe I can't demonstrate exactly how to send emails as well, but because that has a mail server dependency, we need to set up the mail server first. If it is real time, that mail server setup will be done by different teams. So we can't do that, but yeah, this is the syntax to send the emails if at all there is a mail server already ready. So, right, so whichever the stage that you wanted to include, can you include Sonar stage? Sorry, right? Now it will add the Sonar stage as well in your pipeline. You see here, Sonar analysis, and we got the exactly same syntax what I have used here with some sample mvn command. So that's how the pipelines are created, so simple by these chat GPTs and all. All what is expected is you should understand what the syntax is doing at least and do some little tweakings, changes. That is more good from the expectation perspective, right? And we can just ask the chat GPT and we'll get a code. Are we good with that? So being said that, I think I'm almost done for today, guys. We are done with the CI/CD pipeline and how the Argo is working. So probably in the next lecture, I will show you how to install the Argo as well. Okay, like I'll not show you this whole setup what I have discussed here. This is just a thought process to give you the thought process I talked about. But I think most of the CI pipeline is already executed. We did the multi-branch CD pipeline as well. The due is Argo, right? I'll show you how to install the Argo, how Argo will do the continuous sync using the GitOps model in the next lecture too. So if any questions, do let me know, or else we are good for today. We'll regroup in the next lecture.